Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're not exploring an ancient castle or fleeing a plague cart. No, tonight, you're doing something far more Roman, something far more respectable. You're going to take a bath. Not a warm soak in a quiet tub, mind you. A Roman bath, which means you'll be undressing in front of strangers, scraping your skin with communal tools, sweating with 50 other men in a windowless room, and then plunging into water that smells faintly like feet and regret. It's not luxurious, it's not even sanitary, but it's what a good Roman does. Before we wade into the steam, the scraping, and the subtle social violence of it all, do me one small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's so fun to see who's listening from around the world. And if you'd like early access to more of these grim history stories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable. Maybe switch on a white noise machine if you've got one for extra relaxation. I'll leave a link to the one I use in the description. Let's begin. You're not wealthy, you're not powerful. You don't own a villa or a fleet of slaves or a marble statue of yourself posed heroically in the atrium. You're just a regular Roman trying to keep your head down and your tunic clean in a city that smells like ambition, sewage, and old fish. You wake, eat what passes for breakfast, and brace yourself for another mandatory display of civilization, the bathhouse. You don't go because you want to, you go because you have to. Skipping the baths would raise questions. Are you sick? Are you antisocial? Are you disrespecting Roman virtue? The public baths aren't optional. They're expected. They're part of your routine, part of your status, and part of how you prove you belong. It doesn't matter if the very idea of shared scrubbing makes your skin crawl. It doesn't matter that you came home itchy last time, or that you still can't forget what floated past your leg in the frigidarium last week. You'll go. Because that's what Romans do. Because not going is worse than going. So you gather your things, not much, just a threadbare tunic, a small wooden flask filled with cheap oil, a dull strigil that's seen better decades, and a few bronze coins sticky with sweat from someone else's purse before they ended up in yours. You try not to think too hard about that. There's no soap in the Roman world, just oil, scraping, and prayer. Your feet are already dirty again from the walk, and the sun hasn't even cleared the rooftops. You make your way through the crowded street, past vendors hawking warm wine and shriveled fruit, past shrieking children and the slurred songs of drunks who never went to bed. And there it is, the bathhouse. It looms ahead like a temple of cleanliness, a contradiction so obvious it feels cruel. Marble columns, stone steps, grand statues of gods and heroes who, presumably, never had to queue for a communal sponge. The bathhouse promises refinement, but you know better. You know what waits inside. The noise, the heat, the flesh, the smells, the men who talk too loudly, and the ones who don't talk at all. The politics, the rituals, the threat of infection, robbery, or unwanted conversation. All of it carefully wrapped in the illusion of virtue. You sigh, adjust your grip on your oil flask, and step closer. The line is already forming at the entrance. Mostly men like you, some older, some younger, all radiating the same resigned tension. A few slaves mill about, eyes low, clutching towels and bags that aren't theirs. You join the queue and feel the man behind you breathe too close to your neck. You ignore it. You've learned to ignore a lot. The stone beneath your feet is already warm. The smell of the baths hits you before the door opens fully. Sweat, mildew, something metallic, and the unmistakable tang of desperation. You shuffle forward with the rest of the crowd, one slow step at a time. The line is thick with the smell of sun-warmed wool, unwashed skin, and cheap perfume worn too liberally by someone trying to mask failure with flowers. Everyone is here for the same reason, more or less. To look clean, to seem Roman, to play their part in the civic farce of shared hygiene. The sun creeps higher, illuminating the bathhouse facade in a way that makes it look noble, marble columns glowing faintly, statues holding aloft basins, or staring into the middle distance with expressions carved to suggest dignity. It's all a bit theatrical, really, because no matter how grand the outside looks, you know that inside it smells like boiled men and regret. The entrance arch is flanked by two minor deities in stone, one with a jug, the other with a towel. You're not sure who they are. You don't care. What you care about is how long it will take to get through the door and whether your coin pouch will still be full when you do. A slave brushes past you carrying a bundle of damp cloth and doesn't bother to apologise. You hear someone ahead mutter about the delay. Someone behind coughs, loud, wet, unapologetic. No one turns around. It's far too early for that level of social involvement. Eventually, you reach the outer gate, where a bored-looking porter eyes each new arrival like he's cataloguing livestock. The line splits here. Slaves and their masters head in one direction. Freeborn citizens like you head toward a small window set in the wall, manned by someone who looks like he hasn't moved in 3 days. He doesn't speak, just extends a hand and waits. You place your bronze coins on the smooth stone ledge, watching them vanish into a small wooden box without so much as a nod. That's it. That's your receipt. You've paid your fee and earned your right to be stripped, scraped, scalded, and socially judged. Behind you, a young man argues that he paid yesterday and shouldn't have to again. The attendant doesn't even blink. A guard, half asleep in a corner, shifts just enough to suggest he's willing to move if necessary. The young man relents. Everyone does eventually. There's no point in making a scene. The bathhouse is a place of rituals, and everyone knows their role, even if that role is to suffer quietly. You step aside and watch the others file in. Most are like you, men of modest means, citizens with just enough money to keep up appearances, but not enough to escape the public facilities. There are a few better-dressed patrons, the kind who wear their togas too neatly and speak too loudly, just to remind everyone that they don't really belong here. This is a temporary visit for them, a curiosity. Their real baths are in private gardens, with attendants who don't smell like burnt oil and disappointment. Women are nowhere to be seen, of course. Their hours are different, scheduled for a time when the men are already done fouling up the water. But that's supposed to be for their modesty, but everyone knows it's just about control. When they do come, they pay more, they're scrutinised more, and they get less space. But that's not your concern today. Today, it's just you and a few dozen strangers slowly funneling into a tiled maze of heat, moisture, and regret. At the threshold, another slave, older, bent at the shoulders, eyes glazed with exhaustion, waves you through. He doesn't speak either. Probably can't anymore. Too much steam. Too many years breathing in whatever grows on wet walls and underfoot. He holds a sponge in one hand and a bundle of linen in the other, but no one takes either. Those are for the higher paying guests. You'll use your own rag, if you remember to bring one. The moment you step inside, you feel it. Not just the warmth, but the shift. The air changes, becomes denser, heavier, like walking into someone else's breath. The sound changes too. Voices echo strangely. Laughter bounces from marble to mosaic and back again. And every shuffle of feet on wet tile becomes a faint squelch. There's a particular acoustic to suffering in stone chambers, and the Romans have perfected it. You're not even in the baths yet, and already you can hear the groaning of men trying to act relaxed and failing. The floor is damp, of course, not just wet, but slick with a thin film of something that might be oil or sweat or bathwater runoff. Probably all three. You step carefully, trying not to slip, while a child runs past shrieking with either joy or terror. It's hard to tell the difference here. You glance toward the walls, lined with faded frescoes, depicting idealized bodies lounging in artificial poses, untouched by wrinkles, scars, or awkward proportions. You don't look like them. No one does. but Rome keeps painting the lie. There's a brief moment, just one, as you pass under the arch that separates the entryway from the inner corridor, when you consider turning around, pretending you forgot something, making up an excuse, anything to delay what comes next, but you don't. Because it's easier to endure the ritual than to explain why you're avoiding it. You keep walking, past a small niche filled with cracked pottery and discarded sandals, past a marble bust of a former governor, whose name no one remembers but whose nose has somehow remained intact through centuries of humid indifference. To your left, a cleaner, probably another slave, kneels over a broken tile with a rag, dabbing at a stain that looks suspiciously like last night's wine, and something less dignified. No one helps him. No one thanks him. He doesn't look up. You think about offering a word but stop yourself. Kindness here just slows the line, and you're almost through. You pass one more arch. The stone here is darker, stained from years of moisture and footprints, and the kind of invisible things that cling to damp air. You take a breath, shallow, careful, and feel the warm fog beginning to wrap itself around your shoulders. It smells like everything and nothing, like oil and feet and old breath, like history gone stale. You're through, you've paid, you've entered, you're officially inside, and already the air sticks to your skin in a way that feels like a warning. The slave by the inner door gives you a long, unreadable glance. You nod out of habit. He doesn't nod back, just turns away and resumes wiping down a bench with the kind of rag that probably spreads more than it removes. Behind you, someone mutters about the crowd. The corridor curves and widens, the walls sweating under the weight of years. You follow it until it opens into the upper deuterium, the changing room. The sound hits first, a muddled chorus of grunts, sniffles, bare feet slapping on tile, and the wet squelch of someone dropping a tunic that should have been washed last week. Then the smell, oil, mildew, sour flesh, and something herbal that never quite masks any of it. The room is lined with stone benches and recessed niches carved into the walls, each one a temporary grave for someone's modest possessions. You step in and instantly become part of the churn. There's no privacy here, no curtains, no partitions, not even the illusion of personal space. Just men, dozens of them, undressing at various speeds, some with casual indifference, others with quiet dread. The air is humid enough to soften wood, and every surface feels vaguely sticky. A few slaves scurry through, collecting discarded sandals, wiping down benches with cloths that haven't been properly wrung out since Saturnalia. One crouches by a cracked urn and begins scooping out a mess that could be oil, or bath water, or something with teeth. You don't ask, you just look for an open spot. You find a narrow section of bench between a snoring older man with scars across his chest and a teenager trying very hard not to make eye contact with anyone. You sit awkwardly and begin the ritual. Tunic off first. You fold it tightly, too tightly, and press it into one of the higher niches, hoping that elevation somehow equals security. Your belt goes next, then your shoes, worn thin at the heel and still carrying the dust of the street. You wedge them between the folds of fabric, trying to hide them like a squirrel hiding nuts in full view of a hungry crowd. There are no locks, no guards, only one slave assigned to watch this room, and he's currently slumped in a corner, eyes half closed, chewing something he probably shouldn't be chewing. You pause, just for a moment, just to stare at your belongings, memorizing their shape, their position, their context. The tunic's frayed hem curling over the edge of the niche, the right sandal slightly darker from a wine stain. You still haven't explained. You commit it all to memory, as if that will stop a desperate man from stealing them the moment your back is turned. You've heard stories. Everyone has. Some men leave the baths cleaner but without clothing. Others return to find their sandals replaced with something 2 sizes too small. Once, a man left with only one shoe. You don't know how he got home. A loud laugh bursts from the other side of the room. Two men joke about the temperature of the caldarium, wagering who will faint first. Their voices echo strangely off the wet walls, like a theatrical performance put on for people pretending they enjoy this. You try to ignore them. You focus on the next step, removing your undergarments, if you were wearing any, and tucking them under your tunic. The bench is cold beneath you, slick with condensation or worse. You resist the urge to wipe it off. Now you're naked, fully, properly, Romanly, and it feels awful. You fold your arms, but that only highlights everything else. You drop them. You shift your posture. Try to look casual, like a man who's done this 100 times. Like a man whose dignity hasn't just slipped off with his belt. Everyone's naked, yes, but some men seem immune to shame. They stroll between benches like gods, unconcerned, unconstrained. Their bodies marked by scars, tattoos, and the easy confidence of people who've never lost a sandal. You are not one of them. To your right, a man argues with the niche slave about a missing tunic. The slave doesn't argue back. He just shrugs, mutters something about watching too many niches at once, and goes back to his chewing. The bather curses loudly, then storms out half covered in someone else's discarded cloak. You look at your own niche again, still full. For now. You reach for your oil flask. It's wooden, carved crudely, with what might have once been a dolphin or a turnip, depending on the angle. The oil inside is thick, slightly rancid, and will be your only defense against grime in the coming ordeal. Next to it is your strigil, a curved metal scraper shaped like a sickle and about as comforting. Yours is borrowed. From whom, you're not sure. It was handed to you at some point and hasn't been cleaned since. You hold it at arm's length, examining the edge for obvious signs of infection, then wipe it with the hem of your already sweaty cloth. It doesn't help. Around you the room churns. Some men are finishing, oiling themselves in slow sweeping motions that seem both ritualistic and vaguely performative. Others are just arriving, still dressed, still momentarily dignified. The noise swells and dips in waves, jokes shouted, whispers hissed, footsteps smacking wet stone, and the rhythmic scrape of strigils across backs, arms and flanks. It's a symphony of exfoliation and social anxiety. The temperature rises slightly as more bodies crowd in. The air becomes heavier, saltier. Someone knocks over a jar of oil, and it rolls across the floor in lazy spirals until it collides with your foot. You bend to retrieve it, hand it back, and the man nods without thanks. That's as close to camaraderie as it gets here. The slave in the corner finally stirs. He stands groaning, stretches his arms, and begins making a slow lap of the room, eyeing the niches with the vague alertness of a man trying to remember what alertness feels like. He's thin, barefoot, and his tunic is damp in places it shouldn't be. You wonder how long he's been here, whether he ever leaves, whether he even knows who owns what anymore. He pauses near your niche, stares at it for a beat too long, then shuffles on. You don't relax. You won't until your clothes are back on your body and your sandals are on the correct feet. You check your oil flask to make sure it hasn't leaked. It's still half full, which is fortunate. You'll need it soon. Some men oil themselves in the changing room, but you'd rather wait until you're somewhere less crowded and ideally less sticky. A bell sounds somewhere deeper in the building, a low metallic tone that signals a shift in the rooms or maybe just the hour. Men begin filing out of the apoditerium in loose clusters, heading toward the heat, the steam, the next step in this absurd performance of wellness. You hesitate, just for a second, then you grip your flask in one hand, your strigil in the other, and step forward. Your feet slap wetly on the stone. The floor here is uneven in patches, some tiles sunken, others slick. You take your time. You try not to think about how many feet have walked this path today, or yesterday, or how many more will do it tomorrow. The corridor ahead glows with a faint orange warmth. You feel it already, just a whisper of heat rising from the stones. Somewhere beyond it, a dozen half-naked men are sitting in rooms designed to sweat the soul out of the body, talking about politics, ulcers, and gods that probably don't care. The heat rises with every step. The corridor narrows slightly, forcing you to pass close to the wall, your bare shoulder brushing against damp plaster etched with long-faded murals. Lithe, idealised bodies lounging beside pools that almost look clean. You're not fooled. The murals lie. The walls lie. The whole experience lies. But you clutch your strigil, now slightly warmer from your palm, and enter the chamber where Romans practiced their peculiar brand of cleanliness. This is where the scraping happens. The room opens into a shallow alcove that branches off before the steam begins in earnest. The walls here are polished, not for beauty, but for ease of wiping. The light comes in from a small grated windows near the ceiling, casting stripes across the tile floor like prison bars. You step into one of the alcoves and instantly you feel eyes. Not accusatory, not even curious, just vaguely aware in the way people glance at carts teetering with produce. You're one of many bodies, and everyone's here to scrape. This is the part you hate most. Not the heat, not the stairs, not even the awkward nudity. No, it's the scraping, the oil ritual, the way everyone pretends it's hygienic because they've been told it is. There is no soap in the Roman bathhouse, no bubbles, no cleansing foam, no scented lather to wash the day away. There is only oil, cheap olive oil if you're lucky, rancid dregs if you're not. You slather it on, let it mix with your sweat and street dust and whatever else has decided to cling to you, and then scrape it all off with a curved metal blade. It's primitive, it's absurd, and it's Roman. You reach into your flask and pour a line of oil down your forearm. The sensation is almost pleasant at first, warm, slick, slightly fragrant if you don't inhale too deeply. You rub it across your arm, shoulder, and chest in slow circles. The oil clings and drips in places it shouldn't. You repeat the process on your legs, trying not to think about the slipperiness under your feet. Then comes the blade, the strigil. Yours is dull. Not dangerously so, but enough that you can feel it dragging slightly, instead of gliding. You brace your arm and scrape downward in slow strokes, watching the oil collect in grimy curls along the edge. It doesn't just take oil, it takes skin, dead cells, dirt, grit, everything that's settled into the folds of your body. You pretend it's effective. You pretend it's progress. But as you look down at the metal edge, coated in a smear of brownish slime, you wonder if you're actually just rearranging the filth instead of removing it. Next to you, a man offers a grunt of greeting and gestures to your back. He's older, scarred with a belly that sags but a posture that doesn't. You hesitate. It's customary, sometimes even polite to help scrape each other's backs. But it's also a gamble. You nod reluctantly and turn. He takes your strigil without asking and begins. The sensation is not gentle. The blade presses into your shoulder blades and works downward in rough arcs, catching slightly at old scars in the curve of your spine. You grit your teeth and try not to flinch. When he finishes, he hands the strigil back with a nod, then turns around expectantly. You owe him now. That's how it works. You take the tool and scrape his back as quickly as you dare, trying to avoid the worst of the moles and blemishes. His skin is rougher than yours, more weathered, more resigned. When you finish, he grunts something that might be thanks and walks away, his back now streaked with oil and faint red lines. You wipe the strigil on the cloth draped over your arm. The cloth is already saturated, it doesn't help. Elsewhere in the room, a wealthier patron lounges while two slaves oil and scrape him in synchronized movements. His skin shines unnaturally in the light, as if trying to distract from his paunch. He laughs at something one of them says, something too quiet for you to hear. You imagine it's a joke at your expense. You imagine a lot of things. standing here mostly naked, scraping yourself like livestock before auction. There's a bucket near the corner where some of the scraped residue collects. You glance at it once and immediately regret it. The surface glistens like soup left out overnight, yellowish, streaked with grey, flecked with something black that might have once been a hair or a bug or a fingernail. You look away, quickly. More oil, more scraping, your knees, your shins, the hollow behind your knee, where sweat pools like a forgotten debt. You skip your feet for now. The floor is already too slick. Some men do the bottoms of their feet. You've seen them, lifting one leg awkwardly, wobbling as they balance, only to slide slightly, and curse in 3 syllables. You'll wait, maybe forever. Behind you someone sneezes violently, then coughs. You tense, not because of disease, though that's always a risk, but because the sneeze was uncomfortably close to your pile of oil and cloth. You glance down. It's fine, you think. Maybe. Another man enters the chamber, whistling. He's young, smiling, carrying a polished bronze strigil that gleams like it's never touched a real back. His sandals are nicer than yours. His tunic, now neatly folded in the niche outside, had embroidery on the hem. A freedman's son, perhaps, maybe a junior scribe. He greets a few others, slathers himself in oil, and begins scraping with theatrical ease. The kind of man who believes this is all quite civilized. A slave pushes a wheeled tray between 2 alcoves. On it are stacked oil flasks, cloths and fresh strigils, though fresh here just means recently wiped. You eye them warily. Yours works well enough. Dull as it is, you try not to think about where it's been before it landed in your hands, or who last scraped what with it. The man next to you swaps his strigil out, muttering that his last one gave him a rash. The new one probably will too. Someone slips behind you and brushes your shoulder. You don't turn. There's no point. The room is too crowded now. Bodies packed close like olives in a jar. The sound of scraping metal against oily flesh rises, falls, and rises again in waves. Some men hum, others grunt. A few talk politics in low voices, as if this were a Senate chamber rather than a tiled bunker of skin cells and regret. You finish your arms, your chest, your thighs. You stop before re-oiling. There's no point. You'll sweat off anything else in the next room. Already your skin feels raw, smooth in places, inflamed in others. A dull red mark blooms across your shoulder from where the older man scraped too hard. You tell yourself it's fine. You tell yourself it means the oil worked. The bucket in the corner is full now. Someone adds to it with a flick of their strigil, and a fresh ripple of filth sloshes across the top. You wonder where that water goes, where it ends up, whether it's used again somehow. You decide not to ask. You give your strigil one last scrape against the side of the basin, then wipe it down with the rag that's now little more than damp thread. You wrap the flask and blade together in your cloth, walk back toward your niche, and wedge them deep into the folds of your tunic, just beneath your sandals. If someone wants them badly enough to dig through all that, they probably need them more than you do. You begin to make your way to the next room, the tepidarium, not the heart of the bathhouse, but certainly its throat, humid, crowded, and hard to breathe through. The doorway pulses with orange light, and a low mist curls just beyond the threshold. People are moving that way now, finished with their scraping, ready for the next round of performative purification. You follow the line of glistening bodies through the low archway. The floor is slicker here, the stone worn as smooth from thousands of footfalls and permanently damp. The moment you cross into the tepidarium, you feel it, a shift not just in temperature, but in texture. The air thickens around your face, wraps itself around your chest, and clings to your limbs like a needy child. It's not quite hot, not yet, but it's warm enough to coat every surface with a fine mist of shared perspiration. You take a slow, shallow breath and regret it instantly. The tepidarium is a long chamber with vaulted ceilings and walls so wet they glisten like raw meat. The steam isn't dense enough to obscure everything. just enough to soften the edges. Statues lurk in alcoves, their once proud faces now streaked with condensation and mildew. Benches line the perimeter, each one occupied by at least one man in a state of partial repose, shoulders slumped, eyes half-lidded, limbs sprawled with the slack elegance of boiled poultry. You shuffle toward an open stretch of bench and sit, immediately regretting it as the stone sucks the last of your body heat into itself, before radiating it back as an unpleasantly clammy warmth. It's not silence in here, but it's quieter than it should be, given the number of people present. The voices are low, mostly murmurs, traders whispering about grain prices, veterans groaning about their joints, one particularly nasal man droning on about the philosophical properties of steam. Somewhere in the corner, someone coughs, wet, repetitive. You hear it echo off the walls and mix with the steam in a way that makes you deeply uncomfortable. You tell yourself it's probably nothing. You tell yourself that even if it's something, everyone here will catch it together, so it's not worth worrying about. A man passes you on the way to the opposite bench. His skin shines with sweat and oil, and he smells faintly of rosemary and regret. He nods as he walks by, and you return it out of habit, though neither of you really care. This is the part of the ritual where social rules become hazy. Talking is allowed, but not encouraged. Eye contact is permitted, but frowned upon. Everyone here is trying to look like they're relaxing, while also trying not to touch anything more than necessary. You lean back, letting your shoulders touch the wall. It's warmer than the bench, but also wet. You don't know why you expected anything else. Droplets fall from the ceiling at irregular intervals, one landing near your foot and sending a small ripple across the sheen of water, pooling around the base of the bench. You think about shifting your foot. You don't. The heat builds slowly, imperceptibly. You don't notice yourself sweating at first, but then you realise your temples are damp, and a single bead of moisture is making its way down your spine, like a slow insult. You wipe your face with your forearm and smear the sweat into the oil you didn't quite finish scraping off. The smell intensifies, earthy, human, slightly sour. The scent of 30 men trying to outsweat their sins in the name of civilization. Someone sighs loudly, not a contented sigh, just the kind that escapes when all pretense falls away. Another man, 2 benches down, has wrapped a cloth around his head and now looks like a particularly wilted priest. Above you, small vents are carved into the dome, meant to let light in but not heat out. The Roman engineers knew how to trap warmth, and they were very good at it. Unfortunately, none of them ever considered making this room breathable. There's no real circulation, just damp air piling on damp air until it begins to feel like something you could spread on bread. You try to breathe through your nose, then you try your mouth. Neither feels like an improvement. A pair of men enter from the strigil room, talking animatedly about something, likely politics, from the amount of hand motion and the one muttered reference to a magistrate. They stop when they see how quiet the room is and taper their voices into polite grumbling. You wonder how many secrets are passed in this chamber, coughed into the air like spores, meant to be half heard and half ignored. No one records what's said in the tepidarium. It's not that kind of place, which of course makes it exactly that kind of place. Your back starts to stick to the wall, not just from moisture, but from heat. The bench has gone from clammy to burning, and now your thighs are sliding slightly on the stone every time you shift. You glance around. Everyone else seems equally miserable. That's the genius of Roman public life. Everyone suffers the same indignity, which means no one is allowed to complain about it. You are clean because you're sweating in a room full of other men who are also pretending this is what refinement feels like. A slave enters quietly, carrying a small bucket and ladle. He moves between benches and occasionally sprinkles a bit of water onto the floor, as if to cool it or cleanse it, or just Make it look like someone's doing something. His tunic is damp, clinging to his ribs, and his sandals squelch faintly with every step. He doesn't speak. No one thanks him. You suspect he's been here longer than any of you, that he's seen more bodies come and go than the statues have, and that he could draw a detailed map of every rash, boil, and infected scrape that's passed through this chamber in the last month. You don't make eye contact, neither does he. You shift your weight again and feel your knees stick to the tile. Your skin is redder now, glistening, your pores wide open and vulnerable. You wonder how many diseases are floating in the air right now. How many microscopic visitors are hitching a ride on the back of each droplet of sweat, each puff of steam, each recycled breath. It's best not to dwell. That's what the wine is for. Later. For now, you just sit, you sweat, and you pretend it's helping. Somewhere across the room, someone stands too quickly and immediately sits back down, dizzy. The heat does that. It creeps in, it tricks you. It tells you you're fine until your ears start ringing and your fingertips go numb. You take another breath, still thick, still stale. You wonder if the steam will loosen the mucus in your lungs or just help trap it there permanently. You imagine a Roman doctor nodding sagely as you wheeze, declaring your humours unbalanced and prescribing another visit to the baths. You've had enough. You can feel it. Your skin feels like parchment left, too close to the fire. Your muscles ache, not from effort, but from surrender. You look around. Others are rising now too, slowly, staggering slightly, wiping their faces with rags that only make things worse. The heat has peaked. This is the cue. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows. It's time to move on. The next chamber awaits. The real heat. The caldarium. You wipe your eyes, smear salt across your brow, and stand. Your knees creak, your back protests, but your feet find the floor. You shuffle with the others toward the arched doorway at the far end of the tepidarium. The mist thickens as you approach. The air gets hotter, the floor warmer, the noise quieter still. You're leaving the petri dish and stepping into the furnace. The moment you step through the arched threshold into the caldarium, it hits you, like opening the door to an oven you forgot was preheated. The air is heavy with steam, not gentle mist like in the tepidarium, but thick rolling clouds that sting your eyes and make your skin prickle before you've even touched the floor. You squint instinctively, your breath catching on something invisible and warm. It feels like trying to inhale through wet wool. The heat doesn't settle on your skin, it invades it, crawls into your pores, and takes up residence in your lungs. The caldarium is built like a punishment. The ceiling curves overhead, like the inside of a kiln, painted once, but now mostly dulled by time and humidity. Light seeps in from a high, clear story, filtered through rising clouds of vapour, making the space glow like the belly of a beast. The floors are heated from below, a feat of engineering that's been celebrated in every smug architectural inscription you've ever had to sit through. But that knowledge doesn't make your souls burn any less. The stone is hot, not warm. Hot. You take one cautious step and then another, keeping your stride short to avoid blistering, and already your skin is beginning to glisten in a way that feels less like a glow and more like your body starting to surrender. You find a space along one of the side benches, already slick from previous occupants, and lower yourself onto the stone with as much grace as someone being roasted can muster. The bench hisses faintly beneath you, either your imagination or your skin beginning to fuse with the surface. You shift to avoid direct contact with the hottest patches, only to find that there are no cool ones. Your thighs sting, your back arches involuntarily. You tell yourself to relax, because that's what you're supposed to be doing. But this is not relaxation. This is exposure therapy with marble furniture. To your left, an older man sighs contentedly, his head resting against the wall, his eyelids fluttering. His body glows red from the heat, like a sunburn that forgot to ask permission. Across the room, two younger men are arguing softly about whether the water in the bath is hotter today than yesterday, as though that distinction matters in a place where your sweat begins to boil the moment it leaves your pores. A slave stands in one corner holding a bronze ladle and a bucket, occasionally splashing water onto the heated tiles to generate even more steam, as if what's already in the air isn't trying hard enough to kill you. And then there's the bath. It's not large, not elegant, just a rectangular pool of water that shimmers like molten glass. The surface ripples gently, disturbed only by the movements of those brave or foolish enough to enter. The water is fed by the hypocauste system below, furnaces burning day and night to keep it at a temperature just shy of boiling, which the wealthy describe as invigorating and the rest of you call barely survivable. You rise from the bench, your joints moving reluctantly, and approach the edge. There's no graceful way to enter. You can't lower yourself slowly. The longer your skin is exposed to the temperature gradient, the worse it is. You saw a man try once. He lasted until his knees before crying out and flailing backward into the nearest bench. So you do what everyone does. You brace yourself, take a breath that feels like swallowing soup, and slide in all at once. Pain isn't the right word. It's not sharp, it's total. The water envelops your legs, your waist, your chest, and it feels like your entire body has been turned inside out. You suck in a breath through clenched teeth and try not to make a sound, though your face contorts involuntarily. Around you, others sit motionless in the water, their expressions caught somewhere between ecstasy and collapse. You lower yourself fully, shoulders submerged, and feel your heartbeat thudding in your ears like a drumbeat warning you not to do this again. The water doesn't stay still. Every motion, every minor twitch or adjustment sends tiny waves toward your skin, which registers each one like a fresh insult. Your pores open wide, vulnerable. Any small cut, any nick from the strigil, any scratch from the walk here now stings like it's been packed with vinegar and regret. You close your eyes, tilt your head back, and try to think of something else, but all you can think of is how your organs feel slightly poached. A man beside you leans back against the pool's edge and lets out a soft moan, not of pleasure, but of surrender. His arms are outstretched, his eyes unfocused. You wonder if he's about to faint. You wonder if you are. The heat isn't just in your skin now, it's in your blood, your breath, your brain. You feel lightheaded, your fingertips tingle, your stomach clenches slightly. You think about leaving, but moving feels like a bad idea. Eventually you rise, slowly, carefully. The air outside the water feels cool by comparison, though it's still hotter than anything you'd willingly stand in. Your body steams like bread fresh from the oven. Your legs tremble slightly. You climb out one foot, then the other, and retreat to the side bench where you sit and wait for your pulse to return to something that doesn't resemble a military drumbeat. A nearby bather nods at you approvingly, as if you've passed some kind of test. You nod back, too tired to question the standards of a civilization that thinks this counts as therapy. A boy no more than 12 runs through the room carrying a stack of towels. His feet slap the floor with expert speed, avoiding the worst of the heat. He drops a towel near your bench and scurries off before you can thank him. You take it, press it to your face, and feel it instantly go damp from your sweat. It smells faintly of mould and eucalyptus. You breathe through it anyway. The caldarium isn't meant for long visits. It's a test of endurance, not enjoyment. You stay only as long as your dignity will allow, then longer still, because leaving too soon looks weak. But eventually, your skin begins to turn blotchy. Your lips tingle, and your thoughts start to unravel in loops. You need to move, to cool down, or you'll end up being one of the men who collapses in the corner, too proud to quit, too foolish to care. You stand. Your legs wobble slightly, but you manage. The floor is still hot, the air still soup, but you're heading toward relief, or something that pretends to be relief. A doorway at the far end leads to the frigidarium, where cold water waits like punishment disguised as mercy. You walk toward it, your body steaming, your heart thudding, your thoughts a slow swirl of sweat, heat, and shame. You've survived the caldarium, barely. Your feet carry you down the corridor with the sluggish rhythm of someone returning from war. Every step echoes louder than it should, partly because your ears are still ringing from the heat, and partly because the caldarium has left you hollowed out and dazed. The stone underfoot cools gradually, but you don't trust it. You've been burned once already today, literally. Ahead, pale light filters in from a small oculus above a rounded doorway, and with it comes the unmistakable breath of the frigidarium. You don't so much welcome it as accept it. The way one accepts a debt coming due, the frigidarium smells like damp marble, old skin, and faintly sour herbs someone once added to the water and never replaced. The air is colder than anywhere else in the bathhouse, but only by contrast. What would feel refreshingly crisp in another context now feels like walking into a stone cellar barefoot and half-boiled. You step through the arch and blink against the brightness. The steam is gone here mostly. What remains clings to the floor in low patches like mist over a bog. The plunge pool lies in the centre of the room, sunken, with worn steps leading into it from one side, and a crumbling mosaic of dolphins and tritons grinning from the bottom. The tiles were probably cheerful once, but now they're cracked and dulled, the colours lost under decades of foot grime and human runoff. The water itself is motionless, glassy, and unnaturally still. You can already feel the cold radiating from it before you even get close. A few men stand nearby, toweling off, teeth chattering slightly, despite their efforts to appear stoic. One of them, a man with shoulders like an ox and a belly to match, lets out a low grunt as he steps gingerly down into the pool. He makes it to his knees before stopping, sucking air through his teeth. His expression twitches, just slightly, and then he lowers himself, all at once with the determination of a man performing a civic duty he deeply regrets. The splash is muted, and the room absorbs the sound like a church too tired for echoes. You approach the edge and look down into the water. It's clear enough to see the mosaic, but cloudy enough to suggest the presence of things better left uncounted. The surface shimmers faintly, disturbed by the ox-shaped man, now sitting neck-deep and breathing through his nose, like it's the only thing keeping him conscious. You place one foot on the first step, and your body instantly protests. It's not the kind of cold that numbs. It's the kind that stabs, sharp and immediate, as if your blood's offended by your choices. Still, you go forward. You always do, because the full cycle must be completed. Hot, cold, scrape, sweat, scald, shiver. This is what it means to be clean in Rome. You grip the edge of the pool and descend the steps, each one driving a new shock through your calves and thighs. By the time the water reaches your waist, your stomach clenches. Not metaphorically, physically. Your body reacts as if you've been dropped into a mountain spring in midwinter. Your limbs tense, your skin tries to shrink. You pause for a second, breathing shallowly, and then sink down the rest of the way. There is no grace to it, no ritual elegance. You go under like a man escaping flames, and when your shoulders are submerged, every muscle in your body locks. The air in your lungs tries to flee. Your arms twitch, your legs forget what movement is. For a moment, you feel nothing but bright, prickling cold, pure and indiscriminate, wrapping around your nerves and pulling them taut. It's so intense, it almost becomes peaceful. Almost. You open your eyes and stare at the opposite wall, watching the light ripple across the wet plaster. The water smells faintly metallic, with an undercurrent of mildew and something herbal that's turned bitter from neglect. Your teeth start to chatter softly, against your will. You clamp your jaw shut, Everyone else is pretending to enjoy this, or at least pretending not to hate it. You can do the same. Probably. A man enters the pool next to you with a splash that sends a cold wave over your shoulder. You glance over but say nothing. He doesn't acknowledge you either. That's the etiquette here. Shared misery, privately endured. You cross your arms and hunch your shoulders slightly, trying to shrink your surface area. It doesn't help. The cold reaches your bones anyway. You wonder if this is what death feels like. Still, quiet, undramatic. Just you and the slow understanding that your body no longer belongs entirely to you. You stay as long as you can. Not out of enjoyment, but out of stubbornness. You've come this far. You've scraped and sweated and scalded. You're not leaving the ritual unfinished. Around you, other bathers are rising, their skin blotched pink and white, their expressions strained. One man sneezes and quickly wipes his face, muttering something about the water being colder than last time. Another sits on the edge of the pool, dangling his feet like a child, as if hoping proximity alone will count. Eventually, you move, slowly, carefully. You stand and the water streams down your body in uneven rivulets, each drop evaporating into the cold air with a faint sizzle you imagine more than hear. Your skin feels tighter, drawn across your ribs like oiled leather. Your knees tremble slightly, and your toes grip the edge of the step, as if unsure whether they trust you to lead them anymore. You climb out, one step at a time, dripping onto the floor. The stone beneath your feet is slimy, not dangerously so, but slick enough to require attention. You balance awkwardly, wiping your hands on your thighs, which are now flushed an angry pink. The towel you brought in with you, damp before, now soaked, hangs limply over your arm. You press it to your chest and it sticks for a moment, before sliding off again. You decide to carry it instead. You glance once more at the plunge pool, now disturbed by another new arrival, gasping as he enters. You feel a strange, bitter solidarity with him. You nod in his direction. He doesn't see it. You didn't expect him to. The warmth doesn't return. That's your first mistake, thinking it might. As you step into the narrow hallway, beyond the frigidarium, still dripping and vaguely pink from the plunge, the air stays damp, but doesn't rise in temperature. It just hangs there, heavy and stale, a liminal space between ritual purification and the unfortunate biological consequences of it. A faint trickle of water, at least you hope it's water, runs along the base of the wall, disappearing into a dark crevice that smells like the inside of a neglected latrine, which, unfortunately, is exactly what's ahead. You've reached the lavatories. Technically, they're part of the same bath complex. Functionally, they're a different world. The steam and scraping and sweating might make you feel vaguely Roman, at least in a performative sense. This part strips that illusion away. The marble gives way to rougher stone. The torches flicker more dimly. And the smell, gods, the smell, is thick with ammonia, rot and desperation. A man in a towel hurries past you, eyes down, clutching his midsection. He's seen something. Or done something. Possibly both. The room itself isn't hidden. It's not behind a curtain. It's not even separate from the walkway. You enter, and it opens immediately into a long, low bench of stone, perforated with oval holes, spaced just far enough apart to discourage conversation, but not far enough to prevent it. There are no stalls, no doors, no partitions. If you're lucky, you sit beside someone who understands the meaning of silence. If you're not, you get a neighbour who wants to discuss politics while relieving himself. Or worse, someone who hums. You don't sit immediately. No one does. First, you inspect. The stone is wet in places it shouldn't be. One of the holes appears to be blocked. A pale puddle fans out around it like a warning. The sponge on a stick, tersorium, leans in a bucket of water that's already seen too much. Communal. Always communal. You wonder briefly if there was ever a time when that seemed like a good idea. Maybe in theory. In practice, It's everything you feared it would be, and slightly more. The sponge is dark at the edges, fraying, clinging to the stick in a way that suggests mutual resentment. You find a spot toward the end of the row, where the smell is slightly less aggressive. You lower yourself with great care, knees bent, calves trembling, keeping your feet flat against the slimy floor to avoid slipping mid-squat. The stone is cold and slightly gritty beneath your thighs. You try not to breathe through your nose. You try not to breathe much at all. There's no privacy here, just the low sound of dripping water, occasional shifting from your fellow sufferers, and the distant, unmistakable gurgle of the drain system doing whatever it does. That, of course, is the other problem. Roman plumbing is clever, ingenious even, but it is not clean. The latrines don't flush the way you'd hope. Instead, they rely on a slow, continuous flow of water beneath the benches, carrying waste through narrow channels beneath the floor. Sometimes the water comes from a diverted aqueduct. Sometimes from redirected runoff from the pools. And sometimes, disturbingly often, from reused water that has already passed through other parts of the bath complex. You've heard rumours, everyone has, that the same water warming your feet in the caldarium might have flushed through this room only hours earlier. That the hot air wafting through the hypocaust system carries more than just heat. You look down. The channel beneath your bench gurgles faintly, like a lazy stream dying in its sleep. You wonder how far it travels before it reaches the Tiber. Or if it does, maybe it loops back. Maybe it circles forever beneath the city, heating bath floors, filling basins, rinsing sponges, and recirculating shame. You hear a splash in the distance, followed by a muffled curse. Someone slipped, or dropped the tersorium. You don't check which. You finish quickly, or as quickly as the atmosphere allows. There is no comfort here, no moment of relief. You reach for the tersorium, hesitantly, grimacing, and use it the way every Roman does, quickly, mechanically, pretending it's less horrifying than it is. Then you return it to the bucket, where it sinks back into the grey water like a punished criminal. You shuffle away from the bench, glancing back only once to ensure your foot isn't about to slide into something tragic. The floor is uneven here, worn smooth in patches, sticky in others. You step carefully. As you reach the edge of the lavatory, you pass the cleaning slave, an older man with eyes like smoked glass and a bucket filled with water so murky it may as well be ink. He nods to you, not out of courtesy, but habit. You nod back, equally numb. You both understand each other. Neither of you is paid enough for this. And then, the final insult, a splash against your foot. It's small, cold, and comes from a crack in the floor near the threshold, where runoff from the drainage system seeps back up when the pressure builds. You freeze, look down. It's colourless at least. Could be water, could be something else. You say nothing. You wipe your foot on the back of your other leg and move on. The hallway bends again, slowly rising. The air begins to shift, not warmer, but less damp, less oppressive. You start to hear voices again, normal ones, raised slightly, casual. The sound of conversation, not grunts or coughs, or the grim shuffle of half-clothed men avoiding puddles, but real speech. You're leaving the underworld of Roman hygiene and re-entering the social theatre of the bathhouse. You glance down one final time, checking your towel, your feet, your posture. You look clean enough, not entirely, but enough to pass, enough to move on. The main hall opens ahead of you, brighter, louder, filled with the sounds of laughter, gossip, footsteps, and wine being poured somewhere too close to the bathwater. You step into it, with all the dignity of a man who knows what lies behind him, and has decided not to speak of it. You've completed the physical ordeal. Now begins the social one. The lighting here is brighter, not because the architecture changes much, but because the atmosphere does. Voices rise, feet move with more purpose. There's laughter of a sort, too loud, too practiced, the kind that carries just far enough to imply ease without revealing sincerity. The sound bounces off the polished stone and painted plaster like applause in a theatre. Because that's what this part of the bathhouse is, a stage. And you're once again expected to perform. You move into the flow of bathers who are no longer sweating, no longer scraping, but now lounging, talking and watching. Always watching. Some lean against pillars, some sit on benches, a few recline on low couches with the kind of practiced indolence that suggests they've done very little all day besides appear important. You find an open space near a decorative column and plant yourself there, trying to strike the right balance between alert and uninterested. Anything too stiff suggests nervousness. Anything too relaxed suggests arrogance. Either might draw attention, and attention is not your friend here. The baths, you see, are not just about cleanliness or even the illusion of it. They are about proximity, physical, social, political. Here deals are struck, favours offered, names whispered. If you listen too closely, you hear everything. If you don't listen enough, you miss what might save your skin. You stand still, hands folded loosely across your chest, and let the tide of conversation wash over you. Most of it is meaningless. Boasts about horses, grievances about grain, speculation about the next games. But every now and then, something sharper slips through. Two men a few paces away are murmuring about a senator's nephew and an unfortunate debt. You pretend not to hear, but you adjust your stance slightly, just enough to catch the edge of their words. One of them glances around mid-sentence, and you immediately shift your gaze elsewhere, as though your thoughts have been on the chipped mosaic at your feet this entire time. That's the trick. Always have somewhere safe to look, somewhere that isn't a person. Eyes give you away faster than anything. Nearby, a small group of younger men are laughing a little too loudly at a joke that seems rehearsed. You recognise one of them, not by name but by posture. He's the kind of man who talks when he should listen and listens only when it benefits him. He glances your way, and for a moment you're not sure whether you should nod or pretend you didn't see. You choose the latter. He turns back to his companions without acknowledgement. Probably for the best. A slave moves through the crowd with a bronze pitcher, refilling small cups offered by reclining patrons. Wine watered down, enough to loosen tongues without loosening grip. You're not handed one. Not yet. You're not seated. You're not relaxed enough to be considered part of the conversation circle, which is fine. You'd rather observe than participate, at least here, at least today. An older man with a rheumy eye and a beard like overgrown moss sidles up beside you and begins talking without introduction. Something about the grain supply again, and how it's all the fault of the new overseer in Ostia. You nod at appropriate intervals, say nothing substantial, and offer a vague hum of agreement when he pauses long enough to expect one. He talks as though he's in his own kitchen, not in a room where every third man might be repeating your words to someone with sharper sandals and a longer memory. The tension here isn't overt. No one raises their voice, no one points fingers. But it's there, beneath every anecdote, every joke, every pause that lasts half a beat too long. You've heard of men who laughed at the wrong time and ended up under scrutiny, who agreed with the wrong comment or nodded at the wrong insinuation and found their homes searched a week later. The bathhouse is casual only on the surface. Underneath, it's quicksand made of etiquette and innuendo. Across the room, someone says the name of an unpopular magistrate, just a little too clearly. The conversation around him quiets for half a moment before someone makes a joke to deflect. The laughter resumes. The threat passes. But you mark the moment. You don't know if it was intentional or a slip. You don't want to know. You step away from the column, circling slowly, and stop near a half-empty basin used more for decoration than function. It's filled with petals that are no longer fresh, and water that smells faintly of lavender and faintly of something worse. A man you vaguely recognise, maybe a merchant, maybe someone else entirely. gives you a brief nod. You return it. That's enough. That's all that needs to happen. You've been seen. You've acknowledged. No commitments made. Someone offers you a seat on a low bench near the centre of the room. You decline with a polite gesture, blaming stiffness from the caldarium. They laugh knowingly. You remain standing. A few others are still on their feet, circulating, talking in quiet clusters. You drift toward one, and then another, never staying too long. Enough to look engaged, not enough to be remembered. At one point, you catch a name, a real one, important, followed by a phrase that makes your stomach tense. You pretend you didn't hear. You glance toward the ceiling. You count the cracks in the plaster. You make a mental note to forget everything you just learned. Because knowledge here is dangerous. Knowing too much, remembering too clearly, reacting too quickly, that's how you end up somewhere darker than a bathhouse. You think of your niche, your folded tunic, your sandals, and your flask. You think of how far away they are, how exposed you are in this room of damp heat and sharpened smiles. Someone behind you begins telling a story about a foreign diplomat who mistook a urinal for a wine basin. Everyone laughs. You smile. You do not laugh. You don't trust your voice not to betray you. Then, as if conjured by timing or irony, a young attendant appears carrying a small wooden tray. It holds slices of dried fruit, soft cheese on dark bread, and a few clay cups of wine. He offers it to the group near you. They take their share. Then he turns to you. You hesitate. Not because you're not hungry, you are, but because the food is a signal, an invitation, to stay, to engage, to be part of this circle of men who joke with one hand and measure you with the other. You reach for a piece of bread slowly and thank him with a nod. He says nothing, just tilts the tray again, offering a cup. You take it. The wine isn't warm, which surprises you. It's not cold either, just tepid, the way rainwater feels when it's sat in a clay cup all afternoon. It smells faintly of vinegar and something herbal, and when you take a sip it burns with the intensity of something poorly mixed and slightly medicinal. It's the kind of wine served not to be enjoyed but to be endured, to grease the wheels of conversation and dull the memory of the last room you were in. You swirl it once and take another small mouthful, hoping it gets better. It doesn't. The bread is stale at the edges, but soft enough in the middle to chew without injury. You tear off a piece and use it to scoop up the crumbly cheese on the wooden tray beside you. The cheese smells stronger than you expected. Goat, maybe, or something trying very hard to impersonate goat. You chew slowly and deliberately, pretending not to notice the fine sheen of condensation on the tray, or the slight curl at the edge of the fig slice. Food in the bathhouse isn't gourmet. It's not even sanitary, but it's part of the ritual, and you're not hungry enough to refuse. Around you, others are eating with varying degrees of enthusiasm and restraint. A man to your left slurps wine like it's a reward, chasing it with a cluster of olives that he pits with his teeth and discards directly onto the floor. Across the way, two older men are arguing over whether the honeycakes are better this season than the last. Their voices rising in that polite Roman way, loud enough to invite agreement, but not so loud as to warrant intervention. One gestures with his food, and a dollop of something sticky lands on the arm of a nearby slave, who wipes it off without comment and continues his rounds. You nibble at a dried date, which is tougher than expected and slightly gritty, and glance toward one of the side pools, where a few men are reclining with wine cups balanced on the tile edge. One of them dips a hand lazily into the water, then flicks it toward his friend in a gesture meant to look playful, but lands with the heavy slap of damp irritation. They laugh, of course, because that's what's expected, but the smile doesn't quite reach the eyes. Everything here is performative, relaxation included. Someone passes behind you with a tray of roasted chickpeas. You consider taking a handful, but decide against it. The last thing you need is a mouthful of crunchy legumes, while trying to maintain your composure in a room where someone could vomit at any moment. And indeed, the man seated diagonally across from you already looks pale. His eyes are glassy, his mouth slightly open, and his hand gripping the edge of the bench a bit too tightly. You recognise the signs. He's either had too much wine, too much heat, or too much of both. You shift your posture slightly, angling away from him, just in case. He retches once, dry and low, then again with more urgency. The others in his circle pretend not to notice, but their bodies tense, feet subtly adjusting, preparing to move. Then it happens. A quiet splatter against the stone floor, followed by an apologetic murmur and the sound of liquid spreading. The man slumps forward, his cup rolling off the bench and into the pool with a faint plop. Someone sighs. A slave appears almost immediately, armed with a rag and a tired expression. No one speaks of it. No one scolds. This is not the first time it's happened. It won't be the last. You take another sip of your wine and wish you hadn't. It tastes worse now. You wonder if it's the wine, or just the context. A man nearby belches loudly and wipes his mouth on the edge of his towel. He looks pleased with himself. You look away. There is no etiquette here, only the illusion of it. You chew a piece of fig and pretend the room doesn't smell faintly of bile and fermented cheese. The benches are more crowded now. More men have entered, fresh from the tepidarium, wrapped in towels, skins still slick from sweat and pride. They carry their own trays or call out for more wine, and the attendants shuffle between them like phantoms, offering morsels and collecting the remains. The floor is a patchwork of crumbs, grape skins, olive pits, and footprints, some fresh, some ancient, all ignored. You watch as someone drops an entire piece of bread into the water, then watches it drift slowly, like a ship in a dream. No one retrieves it. It's absorbed into the ambience. Two young men nearby begin singing, not loudly, not in unison, just humming fragments of some rural ballads between mouthfuls of melon. The tune drifts lazily across the chamber, and for a moment it almost works. Almost. Until one of them slurs a lyric, and the other corrects him too forcefully. Their song dies in an awkward silence, and they both pretend they never began. You take another bite of your bread, which is drier now and starting to crumble in your hand. Somewhere across the room, a server pours more wine for a man, already leaning too far back on his bench. It sloshes over the rim and trickles down his chest. He laughs, then hiccups, then attempts to sit up, and only half succeeds. You lose track of him a few minutes later, when someone else blocks your view, while gesturing with a skewer of meat. The meat looks undercooked. You try not to think about where it came from. Food here is not sustenance, it's punctuation. A way to fill the silences between political murmurs, between personal boasts, between the long, sweating silences of men pretending to unwind. You don't eat because you're hungry. You eat because you're supposed to. Because holding a cup makes you look like you belong. Because picking at something with your fingers gives you a task when conversation fails. Your own plate is mostly empty now. One half-eaten fig, 2 olive pits, a smear of cheese spread thin across a piece of bread you have no interest in finishing. You swirl the wine in your cup and debate whether to drink the rest or quietly set it aside. Before you decide, someone passes close behind you and the tray wobbles, nearly tipping. You catch your cup in time, but not the date, which rolls to the edge and drops to the floor with a dull, sticky thud. You let it go. The floor has claimed worse today. You're adjusting your seat when the noise shifts. Not the usual hum of conversation or the occasional groan of digestion, but something sharper, louder, a voice raised, not in anger, yet, but in that particular Roman register that suggests irritation disguised as amusement. You turn your head, instinctively, just in time to see 2 men standing. One is pointing, the other is not. And just like that, your stomach forgets the wine and your fingers forget the bread. Because food isn't the only thing that gets spilled in these halls. The raised voices escalate, not quickly, This isn't the market, but with that particular Roman rhythm, slow, theatrical, and designed for maximum audience retention. One man gestures with both hands, wide and open-palmed, as if inviting everyone to witness his frustration. The other stands rigid, jaw tight, arms crossed, the kind of posture that says he's done talking and is now deciding what to do with the tension. You've seen this scene before. Everyone has. And like always, no one intervenes. Not yet. Because intervention implies accountability. And in here, that's a slippery concept. The man doing the shouting is accusing the other of something vague. Something about a borrowed towel, or a bumped tray, or a disrespectful look that lingered half a second too long. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the tone, the body language, and the number of people watching. They circle one another loosely, like stray dogs sizing each other up in a courtyard. You remain still. You've learned not to move when the temperature in the room shifts. Movement draws attention. Attention draws trouble. When the first slap comes, it's more symbolic than violent, a sharp crack of wet palm against a bare shoulder. But that's all it takes. The second man lunges and suddenly they're grappling, slipping, knocking over a cup, stumbling into a third man who rises in protest and finds himself in the middle of something he didn't sign up for. Towels drop. Shouts rise. A few men back away, others circle closer. A slave ducks out of the way with the speed of someone who's been through this before and would prefer not to be involved in another dental reconstruction. No one calls for a guard. There's no point. If there are guards nearby, they're either watching from a distance or pretending not to exist. That's how it works here. The law applies selectively. It arrives when convenient, disappears when awkward. Bathhouse disputes rarely reach the forum unless someone dies, and even then, it depends on who's bleeding. You shift further back against the wall, positioning yourself between a cracked pillar and a decorative basin, arms crossed, eyes neutral. You are a bystander, an innocent, a piece of furniture if necessary. Eventually, someone with enough status and a loud enough voice barks a command. The scuffle breaks, the men separate. One limps, the other clutches his side, and both wear the exhausted expressions of men who have realized that neither has won anything. There are no consequences. There rarely are, except bruises, and sometimes those are considered currency. You exhale slowly, not relief, just habit. The danger has passed for now. You leave your place by the wall and rejoin the stream of bodies moving through the wider space. It's never still here. Even when quiet, the bathhouse hums with energy, simmering tension beneath the surface of forced relaxation. You pass a group of younger men, lounging far too close together for it to be accidental. Their legs brushing, hands lingering. Their laughter is loud, a little too bright, as if designed to camouflage something else. You don't stare. Not because you disapprove, plenty of things happen here that don't bother you, but because staring is an invitation. And this is not a place where invitations are extended lightly. Behind a column, two figures disappear briefly into a recessed niche. One wears a senator's ring, the other wears nothing at all. You keep walking. The baths are public, but there are private corners, and not all of them are architectural. Men come here to socialise, to cleanse, to posture, but also to grope, to flirt, to touch, sometimes gently, sometimes not. Permission is implied or ignored. Sometimes it's asked for and granted. Other times it isn't. You've been touched before, against your will. Nothing dramatic. A hand on your lower back that lingered too long. A brush of fingers that didn't ask. The kind of contact that leaves no mark, but makes you walk differently for the rest of the day. You didn't say anything. You didn't push back. Because doing so would have made it a scene. And scenes lead to questions. And questions lead to consequences. But not always for the right people. One of the slaves brushes past you carrying a pail of water that smells of soap and ash. He glances up once, just briefly, then looks down again. You wonder what he's seen. what he's been asked to clean, whether he even notices anymore. A few feet away, a boy barely old enough to shave scrubs the floor with a rag that's already dark from use. No one thanks him. No one speaks to him. You think about offering a word, but stop yourself. You're not here to draw lines. Further along the wall, you pass a man seated awkwardly, nursing a fresh bruise under one eye and pretending it's from something athletic. A few others glance at him, quietly assessing whether he brought it on himself. That's the unspoken rule here. Don't make trouble, and trouble won't find you. Unless it does anyway, in which case, you are probably asking for it. You skirt the edge of a second pool, lukewarm now, murky with overuse. A man is floating in it, eyes closed, arms outstretched. His chest rises and falls with the slow rhythm of someone who either trusts the room too much or has lost the energy to care. You don't envy him. You step around a discarded towel, wet and vaguely pink at one end, and continue past a pair of men arguing in hushed tones about something financial. Land, maybe, or debts. It's hard to tell. The words are slippery here, the way everything is after heat and wine and exhaustion. A laugh erupts behind you, sharp and a little too forced. You turn your head just enough to see a man flinch as another claps him on the back. The clapping man winks at someone across the room. You look away again. Nothing's happened. Nothing ever does, until it does. You make your way toward the outer corridor, feeling every step more acutely than the last. Your feet ache. Your back itches faintly from dried sweat and imperfect scraping. Your head throbs in that dull rhythmic way that follows cheap wine and too much forced stillness. You're tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep cures, the kind that settles in your joints and your temper and makes everything feel just slightly more absurd. You pass through the final archway, toward the exit, where the cooler air from outside seeps in slowly, mixing with the lingering humidity in a way that smells almost fresh. Almost. You're sore. Your skin is red in patches. You've been burned, chilled, scraped, groped, bumped and ignored. You smell like old oil and someone else's sandals. And yet, by Roman standards, you're now clean. You make the detour back to the apoditerium because of course you can't leave yet, not without your tunic, your sandals, and the mildly cursed tools that got you into this mess in the first place. The room hasn't changed. It still smells faintly of sweat and oil and resignation. A few new bodies occupy the benches, and the niche slave still leans in the corner, chewing something unidentifiable and not appearing to register your existence. You find your niche, amazingly, still intact. Your tunic is there, slightly damp, but folded the way you left it. Your sandals are mismatched in alignment, but not missing. And your strigil and flask, still bundled together, still vaguely oily, still yours. You gather them without ceremony, dress slowly, and take one last look around. You feel no cleaner than when you arrived, just more scraped, more bruised, and slightly poorer in spirit. You limp out of the building, reeking faintly of civic virtue and fungal regret. The sun has begun its slow descent by the time you step back onto the street, tunic sticking to your still damp skin, strigil and flask bundled awkwardly beneath your arm. The air outside is no cooler than inside the bathhouse, just different, drier, dustier, laced with the usual perfume of city life. Roasted meat, donkey droppings, spoiled figs, and the sharp sourness of urine soaked into stone. You pause for a moment, just past the doorway, adjusting your sandals, and feel the sting of cracked skin between your toes. You tell yourself it's from the hot floor. You know better. Your legs ache in that dull, deep way that suggests fatigue rather than exertion. Your shoulders are sore from the scraping. Your feet are raw, not just from the caldarium tiles, but from standing too long on wet stone and walking barefoot through rooms that haven't truly been clean since the Republic. Your skin still glistens slightly, not with cleanliness, but with whatever residue was left behind after the strigil failed to remove it. You smell like oil and mildew and something faintly fungal. You do not feel purified, you feel used. Your ankle itches. You scratch it absent-mindedly and immediately regret it as a warm sting spreads under your nail. Probably a scrape, maybe a rash. You'll find out by morning. You turn down a side street, avoiding a vendor selling hot pastries out of a cart that looks like it was last cleaned during the reign of Claudius, and begin the slow trudge toward home. Every joint feels loose, every muscle heavy. You're not tired in the way that invites sleep. You're tired in the way that makes lying still feel like a negotiation. By the time you reach your door, you've started to catalogue your symptoms. Your armpits are chafing, your calves itch, your lower back burns from where the oil wasn't scraped thoroughly and now clings like paste. Your fingers are beginning to prune again, despite being dry, and your heels sting with each step from standing too long in the frigidarium. You hope it's just irritation. You hope it's not something contagious. But hope, as you've learned, is not a reliable antiseptic. You open the door and step inside your room. Small, stuffy, dimly lit by the last threads of daylight, slipping through the cracks in the shutters. You set your things down in the corner. The strigil clinks softly against the wall. The flask oozes a little oil from its poorly sealed lid and leaves a dark spot on the floor. You don't bother wiping it up. You pull your tunic over your head and hang it on the peg, noting the damp patches already darkening the cloth. It will smell worse by morning. You will too. You sit on the edge of your cot and immediately feel the rawness where the bench scraped your thighs. You shift slowly and lie back. The fabric is rough against your skin, but you're too far gone to care. You stare at the ceiling and feel the itch return. First your ankle again, then your side, then that specific part of your lower back that's just out of reach unless you contort like an amateur acrobat. You scratch anyway. The relief is brief and unsatisfying. You wonder if anyone ever truly feels clean after a Roman bath. Not just ceremonially, but actually clean. The kind of clean where you don't have to inspect your feet for signs of swelling or redness. The kind of clean where you're not silently counting how many men shed your bench, your water, your sponge. You wonder if the infections wait until you sleep, or if they're already burrowing into your skin, congratulating themselves on such easy entry. You think about that bucket by the strigil station, the one filled with spent oil, hair, skin flakes, and whatever else was scraped from the bodies of the men who came before you. You think about the communal sponge in the latrine, the cracks in the floor tiles where water pools and never drains properly, the slave who wiped the benches with the same rag between each bather, never rinsing, just smearing everything from one man to the next. You think about how long the smell has clung to your skin, how long it will continue to do so even after the next bath, and the one after that. Your scalp itches now. Your fingers hesitate before scratching. You're not sure if it's real or imagined. You close your eyes, hoping that sleep will outrun the discomfort. But the room feels hotter now, heavier. Your body won't settle. You shift again. You scratch again. You sigh. Your elbow stings where the stone bench dug into it. Your heel pulses slightly. You wonder if it's a blister. You wonder if it's something worse. So you think about the man who vomited beside the pool, about the towel you had to use afterward, the ones someone else probably used before you. You think about the wine, sharp and acidic, turning in your stomach, and the bread that crumbled in your hand before falling to a floor already coated in footprints, grape skins, and old sweat. You think about how many times you've done this, how many more times you'll do it, and how none of it has ever made you feel the way it's supposed to. Because the bath isn't for you. Not really. It's not about feeling clean. It's about appearing clean. About showing up, being seen, participating in the daily performance of hygiene and civility. It's about proving that you are part of the city, the culture, the empire. Even when your feet are cracked, your skin is blistered, and your towel smells like mildew and resignation. Your stomach turns slightly. You breathe through your nose. Mistake. The sour, sweet blend of old oil and bodily exhaustion creeps up your sinuses. You exhale. You stare at the ceiling again. There's a crack in the plaster that looks like a river delta. You follow it with your eyes and try to focus on anything but your itching. You hear a dog bark outside, a cart creak past, someone shouting at a neighbour. Rome still moving, still steaming, still unclean. You close your eyes and sink slightly into the cot. Not comfortably, not peacefully, just enough to stop resisting. And as the weight of the day settles into your bones and your itching fades only because your body is too tired to care, the final, inevitable thought curls at the back of your mind. You'll have to do this all again tomorrow. That brings us to the end of tonight's story. Not of emperors or conquests, but of one anonymous Roman who stripped down, scraped off, sweated through, and staggered home from a bath that promised cleanliness and delivered rash, rumour, and regret. A civic ritual masked as hygiene, endured not for health but for appearances, and repeated daily until the stench of it all felt normal. If you'd like early access to more of these slow unravelling histories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten lives and overlooked tragedies you'd like to see explored. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S., Amanda Lampke, and Rich Davis. Sleep well.